Hey story enthusiasts! This is Potter Paradox bringing you another gem. In this video, we present to you what if Harry accidentally opened the Chamber of Secrets at age 5 and the Basilisk became his protector. If you enjoy these stories as much as we enjoy sharing them, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let's dive in. Chapter 1, The Boy Who Spoke. Harry Potter hated field trips. Not because he didn't like learning, actually, he loved it. But field trips meant hours trapped with Dudley and his friends without even the safety of a classroom structure. It meant being shoved into corners when teachers weren't looking. It meant whispered threats and stolen lunches. Today's trip to the Museum of London was already going badly. 5-year-old Harry huddled near the back of the group as Mrs. Wilson led his kindergarten class through the Roman London exhibit. His oversized hand-me-down sweater hung off his thin frame, and he kept pushing his taped glasses up his nose. "Everyone stay together," Mrs. Wilson called, but her eyes slid right past Harry as they always did. Adults had a strange way of not noticing him, especially when Dudley was causing trouble. And Dudley was definitely causing trouble. "Psst. Freak," Dudley hissed, hanging back from the group. "I'm gonna lock you in the toilet later." Harry flinched. Last month, Dudley had locked him in a supply closet at school, and no one found him until the janitor came 3 hours later. Uncle Vernon had accused him of seeking attention, and locked him in his cupboard for the weekend. As the class moved toward the medieval London gallery, Harry lagged behind, trying to put as much distance between himself and Dudley as possible. His cousin was distracted momentarily by a display of ancient weapons, giving Harry a chance to slip away. He ducked behind a large pillar and watched his class continue without him. No one looked back. No one counted heads. No one noticed the smallest boy in class was missing. Harry should have felt scared being alone in the massive museum, but instead, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. For once, he could look at whatever he wanted without worrying about Dudley shoving him or stealing his pencil when he tried to take notes. He wandered through the quiet gallery, his small trainers squeaking on the polished floor. The medieval section was nearly empty, just a bored security guard flipping through a magazine and an elderly couple examining a tapestry. Harry paused at a display of ancient coins, pressing his nose against the glass. Funny symbols and stern faces stared back at him. "Hey, Potter!" Harry's heart sank. Dudley had noticed his absence and doubled back with his friend Piers' pole kiss. Both boys wore matching smirks that Harry knew all too well. "Mrs. Wilson's gonna be so mad you wandered off," Dudley taunted, though they both knew she probably hadn't even noticed. "I'm just looking," Harry said quietly, already backing away. "We're gonna tell," Piers said, stepping toward him. "Unless you play a game with us." Harry didn't wait to hear what game they had in mind. He turned and ran. He darted past displays and dodged around surprised visitors. Behind him, he heard the heavy footfalls of Dudley and Piers, accompanied by excited shouts. Harry was smaller, but he was fast. Years of Harry hunting had made sure of that. He spotted a door marked "Staff Only," and, without hesitation, pushed through it. He found himself in a dim corridor lined with boxes and display materials. Harry pressed on, looking for somewhere to hide until Dudley got bored and gave up. The corridor ended at another door. Harry could hear Dudley and Piers entering the staff area behind him, so he pushed through this door too and found himself on a narrow maintenance staircase. He went this way. Piers called. Harry flew down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time despite his short legs. Down he went, past what must have been the ground floor, into the basement levels. The lights grew dimmer, and the air felt cooler. When he reached a landing with yet another door, he pushed through it and found himself in a low-ceilinged tunnel. This didn't look like part of the museum anymore. The walls were rough stone, and the floor was damp beneath his feet. Some kind of maintenance tunnel, maybe. Or something older. Harry continued forward, his breath coming in short gasps. He couldn't hear Dudley anymore, but he wasn't taking any chances. The tunnel sloped downward, twisting and turning. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping occasionally onto the stone floor. After what felt like forever, Harry came to a fork in the tunnel. He hesitated, then chose the right path, which sloped even deeper. The air grew colder, and Harry shivered in his thin sweater. Just as he was thinking he should turn back, the tunnel opened into a larger space. Harry stopped, mouth open in surprise. He stood at the edge of a vast underground chamber. Towering stone pillars entwined with carved serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness. A faint greenish glow emanated from some unknown source, casting the chamber in an eerie light. "Whoa," Harry whispered, his voice echoing slightly. This wasn't any part of the museum he'd heard about. It looked ancient, older than anything they'd seen on the tour. Cautiously, Harry stepped further into the chamber. His footsteps echoed on the stone floor. At the far end, he could make out an enormous statue of a severe-looking man with a long beard. Something about this place made the hairs on his arms stand up, but not in fear, more like recognition. Like he belonged here somehow. Harry approached the statue, drawn forward by curiosity. As he got closer, he noticed something strange. The statue's mouth was slightly open, as if it were about to speak. "Hello," Harry called, immediately feeling silly for talking to a statue. But then, he heard something. A faint rustling sound, coming from somewhere above him. Harry looked up just as a small piece of stone crumbled from the statue's mouth and fell to the floor with a clatter. More rustling followed, and then, movement. Something was coming out of the statue's mouth. Something big. Harry backed up several steps, suddenly aware that he was alone in a strange place far from his class or any adults who might help him. He should run. He really should. But he didn't. Instead, he watched, transfixed, as an enormous snake, bigger than any he'd ever imagined could exist, began to emerge from the opening. Its scales gleamed in the greenish light as it slithered down the statue and onto the chamber floor with surprising grace for something so massive. Harry's heart hammered in his chest, but he remained rooted to the spot. The snake, no, this was too big to be just a snake, raised its head, easily reaching as high as the ceiling of the Dursleys' living room. Its eyes were closed, Harry noticed with odd detachment. The massive serpent flicked its tongue, tasting the air, then turned its head directly toward Harry. "A speaker," came a voice, ancient and slightly surprised. "After so long." Harry blinked, looking around for whoever had spoken. But there was no one else in the chamber. "Hello?" he said again, his voice small. "Who's there?" The giant serpent moved closer, still with its eyes firmly shut. "You understand me, little one? You speak the noble tongue." With a jolt, Harry realized the voice was coming from the serpent itself. He was talking to a snake. A really, really big snake. I can hear you," Harry stammered. "Are you talking?" The serpent made a sound that might have been laughter. "I am speaking as I always have. It is you who are speaking my language, young heir." Harry frowned in confusion. "I'm speaking English." "No, child. You speak the tongue of serpents. Parseltongue, as wizards call it." "Wizards?" Harry's eyes widened. "There's no such thing as wizards. Uncle Vernon says, your uncle," the serpent interrupted, "is what my master would have called a muggle. A non-magical person. But you have the gift. You are a wizard, young one." Harry shook his head. "I can't be. I'm just Harry. Just, a freak." The last word came out quiet, shameful. The serpent moved even closer, its massive head now just a few feet from Harry. He could feel its breath, surprisingly warm in the cool chamber. "You are no freak. You are a wizard, and more, you are a speaker of the noble tongue. Few possess this gift." The serpent's tongue flicked out again. "Who are you, little speaker?" "I'm Harry. Harry Potter." The serpent went very still. Potter? Curious. Yet you speak the tongue, very curious indeed. It seemed to be talking more to itself than to Harry. What are you? Harry asked, fear giving way to fascination. And what is this place? I am Saphras, the Basilisk of Slytherin. And you stand in the Chamber of Secrets, created by my master, Salazar Slytherin, one of the founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry's head spun with these strange new words. I don't understand. No, I suppose you wouldn't, the Basilisk, Saphras, said. How old are you, Harry Potter? 5. Almost 6, Harry added, standing a little straighter. So young, Saphras murmured. Tell me, young one, how did you find this chamber? It was sealed by my master, accessible only to his true heirs. Harry explained about running from Dudley, finding the tunnel, and following it down. As he spoke, he realized he wasn't frightened anymore. Talking to Saphras felt natural, like they'd known each other a long time. When he finished, Saphras was silent for a long moment. The entrance you found should not exist. Yet here you are, a speaker, but not of Slytherin's line. Most interesting. Am I in trouble? Harry asked, reverting to his default assumption when adults, or, apparently, giant snakes, went quiet after he explained himself. No, young speaker. But you are in danger. From you? Harry asked bluntly. Saphras made that strange laughing sound again. I would not harm a speaker. But my gaze is death to all who look upon it. That is why I keep my eyes closed in your presence. Harry glanced nervously at the basilisk's sealed eyelids. You mean, if you opened your eyes, I'd die? Instantly, Saphras confirmed. It is the curse and gift of my kind. Oh. Harry considered this. Thank you for keeping them closed, then. This straightforward gratitude seemed to amuse the basilisk. You are unusual, Harry Potter. Most would flee in terror. Harry shrugged. You're being nice to me. That's more than most people do. There was something profoundly sad in this simple statement from a 5-year-old. Saphras seemed to sense it too. Tell me of your life, young speaker. So Harry did. He told Saphras about living with the Dursleys, about his cupboard under the stairs, about Dudley's bullying and Aunt Petunia's constant disappointment and Uncle Vernon's anger. He talked about strange things that sometimes happened around him, how he'd once turned his teacher's wig blue, how he'd somehow ended up on the school roof when Dudley's gang was chasing him, how his hair grew back overnight after Aunt Petunia cut it all off. Saphras listened without interrupting. When Harry finally ran out of words, the basilisk spoke with surprising gentleness for such a massive creature. Those strange occurrences are magic, Harry Potter. Your magic, responding to your needs and emotions. It is common in young wizards before they learn control. So it's real. I'm really a... Harry couldn't quite bring himself to say the word. A wizard. Yes. And from what you describe, a potentially powerful one. Harry sat down on the cold stone floor, legs suddenly wobbly. But Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia always say magic isn't real. They fear what they cannot understand, Saphras said. But you need not fear your own power. They talked for what felt like hours. Saphras explained about the wizarding world, about Hogwarts, about the 4 founders who built the school 1,000 years ago. Harry listened, rapt, occasionally asking questions that made Saphras tilt its massive head in consideration. You ask intelligent questions for one so young. No one ever answers my questions at home, Harry said simply. So I've saved up a lot. Suddenly, Harry remembered where he was supposed to be. My class. They must be looking for me. Then he frowned. Or maybe not. Mrs. Wilson might not notice I'm gone. You must return, Saphras said. It would be unwise to draw attention to your disappearance or to this place. But how do I find my way back? Harry hesitated. Can I come see you again? The basilisk was silent for a moment. I have been alone for a very long time, young speaker. I would welcome your company, if you can safely return. I will, Harry promised. I'll find a way. As for your return journey. Sathras seemed to consider something. There is a way. But you must trust me. I do, Harry said, and was surprised to realize it was true. This enormous, deadly creature had shown him more kindness in one conversation than he'd experienced in years at the Dursleys. Then close your eyes, Harry Potter, and do not open them until I tell you. Harry did as he was told. He felt, rather than saw, Sathras move closer. Then something smooth and cool touched his forehead, the tip of the basilisk's snout. A strange sensation washed over him, like warm water flowing through his mind. Images flashed behind his closed eyelids, tunnels, turns, landmarks to guide him back to the museum. When the sensation faded, Harry opened his eyes. What was that? A map, of sorts, Sathras explained. I have shared my knowledge of these tunnels with you. You can do that? Put thoughts in my head. Only with a speaker, and only with permission, which you gave when you trusted me. Sathras pulled back slightly. Now you must go. Follow the path I showed you. It will lead you to a maintenance door near where your class will be gathering to leave. Harry nodded, then hesitated. How will I find you again? Will you be here? I have remained here for centuries, young speaker. I will be here. Sathras paused. But perhaps we need not wait for your physical return to speak again. What do you mean? The connection between us, speaker and serpent, it could be strengthened. If you wished it, we might speak across distances, mind to mind. You could talk to me even when I'm at Privet Drive? Harry asked, excitement building. With practice, yes. Would you welcome such a connection? Harry didn't hesitate. Yes. Again, Sathras touched his snout to Harry's forehead. This time, the warm sensation seeped deeper, creating something that felt like an invisible thread connecting them. There, Sathras said, pulling away. It is done. When you wish to speak with me, focus your thoughts on me and reach along that connection. I will hear you. Harry grinned. This is brilliant. Go now, Harry Potter. Your absence will be noted soon if it hasn't been already. Harry turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at the enormous basilisk. Thank you, Sathras. For talking to me. For everything. It is I who should thank you, young speaker. You have awakened me from a long slumber of body and mind. With a final wave, Harry hurried back the way he'd come, following the mental map Sathras had given him. The tunnels that had seemed so confusing before now made perfect sense, and he found his way easily. Just as Sathras had promised, he emerged from a maintenance door near the museum gift shop, where his class was gathering for departure. No one had noticed his absence except Dudley, who glared at him suspiciously. Where'd you go? His cousin demanded. We looked everywhere. Just looking at exhibits, Harry said with a shrug. Got lost. Mrs. Wilson was counting heads. 23, 24. Good, everyone's here. Form a line to board the bus. As Harry took his place at the back of the line, he felt different. Stronger somehow. For the first time in his life, he had a secret that wasn't shameful, it was wonderful. He was a wizard. And he had a friend. He reached tentatively along the mental connection Sathras had created. Can you hear me? He thought. I hear you, young speaker, came the immediate reply, Sathras's voice clear in his mind. Our bond is strong. Harry smiled to himself as he climbed onto the school bus. Even as Dudley shoved him into a seat and kids around him whispered and giggled, he didn't care. He wasn't alone anymore. The weeks that followed were the strangest, and in many ways, the best, of Harry's young life. Every night after the Dursleys went to bed, Harry would lie awake in his cupboard, reaching out along the mental link to Sathras. The basilisk was always there, waiting. "Tell me more about Hogwarts," Harry would ask, curled up on his thin mattress. And Sathras would describe the great castle with its moving staircases and enchanted ceiling, the lake where mere people lived, the forest full of centaurs and unicorns. He told Harry about the 4 houses, Gryffindor for the brave, Hufflepuff for the loyal, Ravenclaw for the clever, and Slytherin for the ambitious. "My master's house has gained a dark reputation," Sathras explained one night. "But ambition itself is not evil, young speaker. It is the choices one makes in pursuit of ambition that define character." "Which house would I be in?" Harry asked. "That is for the Sorting Hat to decide when you turn 11. But you have qualities valued by all the founders, I think." Harry frowned in the darkness of his cupboard. "But I'm not brave or clever or anything special. You found your way to me alone at age 5. You converse with a basilisk without fear. You endure cruelty with resilience. Do not underestimate yourself, Harry Potter." Sathras also taught him about his own history, about his parents, who hadn't died in a car crash as the Dursleys claimed, but had been murdered by a dark wizard called Voldemort. About how baby Harry had somehow survived the killing curse, leaving him with his lightning scar and earning him the title, the boy who lived. "The wizarding world considers you a hero," Sathras told him. "Yet they left you with those muggles who mistreat you." "Curious. Maybe they don't know," Harry suggested. "Or perhaps they know and have reasons of their own," Sathras replied. "Power often lies beneath seemingly simple decisions, young speaker. Remember that." The basilisk didn't just tell Harry about the wizarding world, he taught him basic magical theory, the history of spellcraft, even simple mind exercises to help control his accidental magic. "Magic responds to emotion and intent," Sathras explained. "Your untrained outbursts occur when your feelings overwhelm you. If you learn to channel those feelings, to direct them with purpose." Harry practiced every chance he got. When Aunt Petunia locked him in his cupboard without dinner, he focused on the lock, visualizing it turning, channeling his frustration into purpose rather than helpless anger. The first time the lock clicked open, he almost shouted in triumph before remembering to stay quiet. "I did it," he told Sathras excitedly. "I opened the lock." "Well done, young speaker. But be cautious with such displays. The Ministry monitors underage magic, though they often overlook accidental bursts in very young children." "The Ministry?" And so Sathras would explain another aspect of the wizarding world, patiently answering Harry's endless questions. Summer arrived, and with it, freedom from school. But it also meant more time trapped at Privet Drive under the Dursleys' watchful eyes. Dudley's bullying intensified without teachers around to occasionally intervene. One particularly hot July day, Dudley and his friends cornered Harry in the backyard. "Nowhere to run now, freak," Dudley taunted, his face red and sweaty in the heat. Harry backed up against the garden shed. 4 against 1 wasn't good odds, especially when the one was skinny and small for his age. "Leave me alone, Dudley," Harry said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Or what? You'll tell. Nobody cares about you." Dudley laughed, and his friends joined in. As they closed in, Harry felt panic rising. Along with it came that familiar surge of energy that preceded accidental magic. But this time, remembering Sathras's lessons, he tried to channel it, to give it direction. "Help," he thought desperately along the link to Sathras. "Focus, Harry," came the basilisk's calm reply. "You don't want to harm them, just deter them. Visualize what you need." Harry closed his eyes briefly. He pictured the garden hose, lying coiled by the flower bed. He imagined it rising, turning, spraying. A shout of surprise made him open his eyes. The garden hose had indeed come to life, uncoiling like a snake and spraying Dudley and his friends with ice-cold water. They yelled and stumbled backward, slipping on the suddenly muddy ground. "What the?" Dudley spluttered, his clothes soaked. The back door flew open, and Aunt Petunia rushed out. "What's going on?" "Duddy, you're soaked." Her eyes fell on Harry, still pressed against the shed, and then to the hose, which was now innocently lying on the ground again. "The hose went crazy, Mum," Dudley cried. "It attacked us." Petunia's lips thinned to a barely visible line as she looked at Harry. There was something in her eyes, not just anger, but fear. "Inside." "Now," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Dudley, go change. You boys go home." As Dudley and his friends trudged away, Petunia grabbed Harry's arm, her bony fingers digging into his skin. "What did you do?" she hissed, quietly enough that the retreating boys couldn't hear. "Nothing," Harry said automatically. "The hose must have, don't lie to me." Her fingers tightened. It was that freakishness, wasn't it?" Harry said nothing, which Petunia took as confirmation. "Cupboard. No meals today. And if Vernon hears about this." She left the threat unfinished as she dragged him inside. "I'm sorry," Sathras's voice came in his mind as he sat in his dark cupboard later. "I encouraged you to use magic, and now you're punished." "It's okay," Harry replied. It was worth it to see Dudley's face. "Nevertheless, we must be more careful. Your relatives fear magic deeply." "Why? What did magic ever do to them?" Sathras was quiet for a moment. "Fear rarely requires justification, young speaker. It simply is." That night, something strange happened. Harry had fallen asleep in his cupboard, hungry and frustrated. In his dream, he was back in the chamber with Sathras, telling the Basilisk about his day. But when he woke in the morning, he realized it hadn't been a normal dream. He had actually been in the chamber, or at least, his mind had. "Sathras?" he called mentally. "Last night, was I really talking to you in the chamber?" "Indeed," the Basilisk replied, sounding pleased. "Your magical core grows stronger. Your spirit traveled the connection between us while your body slept. That's brilliant. Can I do it again?" "With practice. This connection is unusual, Harry. I have never experienced its like, even with my master. Perhaps it is your innate magic, or something about being a Parselmouth, or even something unique to you specifically." Harry practiced his dream travel, as he called it, every night. Soon he could reliably visit Sathras in his sleep, his consciousness traveling the magical link between them to appear in the chamber. During these nocturnal visits, Sathras began teaching him about defensive magic, not spells, which Harry couldn't perform properly without a wand, but theory and strategy. "A basilisk relies on its gaze to kill," Sathras explained one night as they sat, or in Sathras's case, coiled, in the chamber. "But if an enemy comes prepared with a rooster or a mirrored shield, I must rely on other weapons, my size, my venom, my knowledge of terrain." "What does this have to do with me?" Dream Harry asked, sitting cross-legged before the massive serpent. "Everything. You too must understand your strengths, prepare for your weaknesses, and never rely on a single advantage. Your Parseltongue ability is rare and valuable, but if you depend on it alone, you are vulnerable when facing a situation where it offers no help." These lessons took on new urgency when, shortly after Harry's 6th birthday, which the Dursleys ignored as usual, Uncle Vernon's sister Marge came to visit. Aunt Marge hated Harry even more openly than the Dursleys did. She brought her favorite bulldog, Ripper, who she encouraged to chase Harry up trees and into corners. On the 3rd day of her visit, Harry was serving tea in the living room when Marge started on her favorite topic, what was wrong with Harry. "Still got that runty look," she observed, looking him up and down as he placed a cup of tea before her. "You get that from your mother's side, no doubt." Harry bit his tongue, remembering what Sathras had taught him about choosing his battles. "Nothing a good thrashing wouldn't cure," Marge continued, slurping her tea loudly. "Vernon, you're too soft on the boy. If he'd been dropped at my doorstep, I'd have sent him straight to the orphanage. Believe me, I considered it, Vernon chuckled, his multiple chins wobbling. Harry's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He could feel his magic stirring, responding to his anger. Steady, came Sathras's voice in his mind. She wants to provoke you. Harry took a deep breath, trying to still his emotions as Sathras had taught him. Probably for the best his parents crashed their car when they did, Marge was saying now. Saved you the trouble of watching him turn out just like them. Wastrels and drunks, the pair of them, the teacup in Marge's hand shattered. Hot tea splashed across her lap, and she let out a yell of surprise and pain. Ripper began barking furiously. What did you do, boy? Vernon roared, rising from his armchair, his face turning purple. Nothing. Harry protested, backing away. But Aunt Petunia was staring at him with that same fearful look she'd had during the garden hose incident. Out, she said sharply. Go to your cupboard. Now. Harry retreated, but not before hearing Petunia explain to Marge that the cup must have had a crack, that these things happen with old china. They lied about my parents, Harry told Sathras later, curled up in his cupboard. They weren't drunks who crashed a car. Why do they keep lying? To keep you small, Sathras replied. To justify their treatment of you. If they admitted your parents were heroes who died protecting you from the most dangerous dark wizard of the age, how could they continue treating you as they do? I hate them, Harry said, surprised at the vehemence in his own mental voice. Hate is a heavy burden for one so young, Sathras said gently. And hatred clouds judgment. Learn from their cruelty, but do not let it consume you. That night, in his dream visit to the chamber, Sathras proposed something new. I believe it's time for you to visit the chamber physically again, not just in dreams, the Basilisk said. There are things I would show you that require your physical presence. But how? Harry asked. I'm in Surrey, and the chamber is in London. I can't just hop on a bus by myself. No, but the Chamber of Secrets is not confined to one location as most believe. Salazar Slytherin created a network of connected chambers and passages beneath Britain. I can travel between them, though I rarely do. There's an entrance near me? Harry asked excitedly. Not exactly near, but within reach. There is an old Norman church 5 miles from your home. Beneath it lies an entrance to the network. 5 miles is really far for me to walk, Harry pointed out. Indeed. Which is why we shall have to be creative. They formed a plan. On Saturday morning, when Vernon took Dudley shopping for a new television, Harry would tell Petunia he was going to the local library. She rarely paid attention to his comings and goings as long as he wasn't underfoot, and the mention of books usually made her lose interest immediately. Instead of going to the library, he would take a local bus using money Sathras had told him about, old coins left in a small cache in the church by Slytherin himself, centuries ago. But how will I get the coins if they're already in the church? Harry asked. I have been, expanding my territory, Sathras admitted. Since forming our connection, I have traveled through the network to the chamber beneath the church. The coins are now hidden beneath the 3rd bench in your local park, where I was able to access an old drain. Harry was impressed. You can move around that much? With difficulty and limitations. I cannot venture far from the network Slytherin built, and daylight is dangerous for me. But yes, I have some mobility. The plan worked perfectly. Petunia barely glanced up from her gardening magazine when Harry mentioned going to the library. He walked to the park, found the ancient-looking coins exactly where Sathras said they would be, and caught the local bus to the village where the old church stood. St. Bartholomew's was a small stone church on the edge of the village, surrounded by a graveyard with weathered tombstones. Harry followed Sathras's mental directions to a side door, which was unlocked, another bit of Sathras's preparation. Inside, the church was cool and dim. Harry padded quietly down the center aisle, his footsteps echoing slightly on the stone floor. He was alone, no service was in progress, and no visitors were around. At the front, to the left of the altar, was a small wooden door that Sathras had described. It led to a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. "Hello?" Harry called softly, just to be sure no one was below. "No one has used this passage in centuries," Sathras assured him. "Continue down." Harry descended carefully, one hand trailing along the cold stone wall for balance. At the bottom, he found himself in a small crypt with several stone sarcophagi bearing the effigies of long-dead knights. "The third sarcophagus from the left," Sathras directed. "Press on the shield carved into its side." Harry did as instructed. With a grinding sound that made him jump back, the stone sarcophagus slid aside, revealing a dark opening in the floor. "Another staircase?" Harry asked, peering dubiously into the darkness. "Yes, but not one built by muggles. You'll need light." Harry bit his lip. "I don't have a torch." "You have magic, young speaker. Remember your exercises. Intent and will." Harry closed his eyes, concentrating. He thought of light, warm, golden light filling the palm of his hand. He focused his will, channeling his magic. When he opened his eyes, a small ball of soft light hovered just above his outstretched hand. "I did it!" he exclaimed, delighted. "Well done," Sathras replied, and Harry could hear the pride in the basilisk's mental voice. "Now, descend." The magical staircase was different from the church stairs, smoother, with symbols carved into each step. Harry recognized some of them from his dream lessons with Sathras, ancient runes for protection, concealment, and endurance. The stairs seemed to go on forever, spiraling deep into the earth. Just when Harry's legs were starting to ache from the descent, they ended at a stone archway carved with entwined serpents. "Speak to it," Sathras instructed. "Say, 'open,' in Parseltongue." Harry concentrated, thinking of the snakes as real creatures. "Open," he hissed, the word coming out in that strange, sibilant language he now knew was Parseltongue. The serpents on the archway seemed to writhe, and then the stone wall beyond dissolved, revealing a tunnel bathed in the same greenish light Harry remembered from the chamber. And there, waiting just beyond the archway, was Sathras. "You came," Harry said aloud, grinning broadly. "Did you doubt I would, young speaker?" Sathras replied, his massive head lowering to Harry's level. His eyes remained closed, as always. "No. But it's different seeing you for real instead of in dreams." Harry reached out hesitantly, then paused. "Can I touch you?" "You may." Harry placed his small hand on Sathras's scales. They were cool and smooth, with a subtle pattern he couldn't see but could feel. "Brilliant," he whispered. "Come," Sathras said, pulling back. "There is much to show you." The basilisk led Harry through a series of tunnels different from those in London. These were smaller, but more elaborately decorated with carvings and occasionally glinting with embedded crystals. "What is this place?" Harry asked, looking around in wonder. "A way station in Slytherin's network. Not as grand as the chamber beneath Hogwarts, but important nonetheless. It was from here that Slytherin could travel secretly to London and other locations when needed." They emerged into a circular room with a domed ceiling. Unlike the chamber in London, this room was furnished, albeit with thousand-year-old items. Stone benches lined the walls, and in the center stood a pedestal bearing a large crystal basin. "A pensieve," Sathras explained, seeing Harry's curious look. "A magical device for viewing memories. But that is not what I brought you to see." The basilisk slithered to the far wall and pressed his snout against a carved snake. The wall shimmered and became transparent, revealing a small chamber beyond. Inside, on stone shelves, sat dozens of books and scrolls, along with small chests and various mysterious objects. "Slytherin's private collection," Sathras said. "Or one portion of it. The main library remains in the Hogwarts chamber, but these works were kept here for specific purposes." Harry approached the now transparent wall. "Can I go in?" "That is why I brought you here." The knowledge within belongs to speakers. It is your right to access it. Harry passed through the shimmering wall, an odd sensation, like walking through a curtain of cool water without getting wet. Inside, he breathed in the smell of ancient parchment and leather. Some of the books were written in languages Harry couldn't recognize, but others were in English, albeit an old-fashioned version that was difficult to read. Still others, to his surprise, appeared in regular English when he touched them. They're translating themselves, he realized. For a speaker, yes, Sathras confirmed from the doorway, too large to enter the small library. Many of these works are enchanted to be readable only by those Slytherin deemed worthy. Harry ran his fingers gently over the spines of the books. What should I read first? That is for you to decide. But perhaps this would be appropriate. Sathras used the tip of his tail to indicate a relatively small volume bound in green leather. Harry carefully took it from the shelf. The cover bore no title, but when he opened it, words appeared on the first page: The Fundamentals of Magical Theory for Young Minds by Salazar Slytherin. He wrote a children's book? Harry asked, surprised. Slytherin had children of his own, Sathras replied. Contrary to popular belief, he was not merely a stern ideologue. He understood the importance of proper early education. Harry sat cross-legged on the floor and began to read. The book was fascinating, starting with simple explanations of what magic was, an energy that existed in certain beings and could be channeled through will, and gradually introducing more complex concepts. He was so absorbed that he lost track of time, until Sathras gently reminded him, "You must return soon, young speaker. Your relatives will become suspicious if you are gone too long." Harry reluctantly closed the book. "Can I take it with me?" "I'm afraid not. The protections on these works prevent them from leaving this chamber. But you may return to continue your studies." "I will," Harry promised. "Every chance I get." Before leaving, Harry explored the rest of the shelves. Most of the books were about magic theory, history, or specific branches of magic like potions or runes. But one shelf held something different: journals. "Are these Slytherin's diaries?" Harry asked, carefully touching the leather-bound volumes. "Some are his, others belong to his descendants, those who found their way here over the centuries." Harry opened one at random and was startled to see it was written in a child's handwriting, not much better than his own. "A young heir," Sathras explained. Slytherin encouraged his children and their descendants to record their magical development and experiences. Harry looked thoughtfully at the journals, then at Sathras. Would it be okay if I started one too?" "I believe that would be most appropriate," the Basilisk replied, sounding pleased. "There are blank volumes on the bottom shelf." Harry found a small, unused journal bound in simple brown leather. When he opened it, the pages were blank and fresh, preserved by magic through the centuries. "I'll write in it next time," he promised, setting it carefully aside. "For now, I should go." The return journey felt much shorter. Sathras guided him back up the magical staircase, and Harry carefully replaced the sarcophagus with another push on the carved shield. He slipped out of the church and caught the afternoon bus back to Little Whinging, arriving at Privet Drive just as Aunt Petunia was starting dinner. She barely glanced at him as he came in the back door. "Set the table," she ordered, as if he'd never been gone. That night, as he lay in his cupboard, Harry felt different, stronger, more connected to who he really was. He had touched books written by Salazar Slytherin himself. He had walked through secret passages no Muggle had ever seen. "Thank you for today," he told Sathras through their link. "It is merely the beginning of your education, young speaker," the Basilisk replied. "There is much more to learn." "I want to learn all of it," Harry said with determination. "Everything about magic, about my parents, about who I really am." "And so you shall. But patience is also a lesson worth learning." Harry smiled in the darkness of his cupboard. For once, patience didn't seem so difficult. Over the next 2 years, Harry's double life continued and expanded. To the outside world, to the Dursleys, his teachers, his classmates, he was still just Harry, the skinny boy with taped glasses and oversized clothes. Quiet, unremarkable, easy to ignore. But in secret, he was becoming something else entirely. Every few weeks, when he could manage it without raising suspicion, he made the journey to St. Bartholomew's to visit Sathras and continue his studies in Slytherin's hidden library. He kept careful notes in his journal, recording his progress with magic, his questions, his discoveries. His control over accidental magic improved dramatically. No longer did strange things happen around him when he was upset or afraid. Instead, he could channel his magic deliberately, small things, without a wand, but impressive nonetheless. He could make lights appear, move small objects without touching them, speed up his own healing when Dudley managed to land a punch, and even influence simple minds, making insects follow patterns he set or causing Mrs. Fig's cats to leave him alone when he was forced to stay with her. Wandless magic is limited but valuable, Sathras told him during one of their dream lessons. Even adult wizards rarely develop the skill, relying too heavily on their wands. Your early practice will serve you well. Along with magical theory, Sathras taught Harry about wizarding culture and politics, the Ministry of Magic, the old pure-blood families, the recent war against Voldemort, and Harry's own place in this world he had yet to officially enter. You are famous, yet know nothing of your fame, Sathras observed. You are wealthy, yet live in poverty. You are magical royalty of a sort, yet raised by the most mundane of muggles. The contradictions of your situation are troubling. What do you mean, wealthy? Harry asked, surprised. The Potters are an ancient family with significant holdings. Your vault at Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank, would contain far more than mere spending money. This revelation bothered Harry more than he expected. Not the money itself, but what it represented, another thing kept from him, another way the Dursleys' narrative was a lie. As he grew older and more knowledgeable, Harry began to wonder why he had been placed with the Dursleys at all. Sathras had theories but no definitive answers. The decision to place you with Muggle relatives would have been made by someone with significant authority, likely Albus Dumbledore, the Hogwarts headmaster, who led the opposition to Voldemort. Why would he put me somewhere I'm so obviously unwanted? Harry asked. That remains unclear. Protection, perhaps, blood relatives might anchor certain protective spells. Or isolation from fame, to prevent you developing arrogance. Or control, limiting your knowledge and connections to make you more malleable when you finally enter the wizarding world. You don't trust Dumbledore, Harry observed. I trust no one who would leave a magical child in a home where they are treated as you have been, Sathras replied simply. Harry's 7th birthday passed with the usual Dursley indifference, but he celebrated privately with Sathras, who managed to procure a small cake through means he refused to explain, leaving it in their meeting place at St. Bartholomew's. How did you get this? Harry asked, amazed at the small chocolate cake with 7 candles. A basilisk has resources, Sathras replied mysteriously. Consider it proof that not all your birthdays need pass unmarked. By the time Harry turned 8, his secret education had progressed remarkably. He could read and understand magical texts well beyond his age level, had mastered the theory of basic spellwork, though he still needed a wand for most actual spells, and had developed his mental connection with Sathras to the point where they could communicate clearly across distances and share sensory impressions. This last ability proved unexpectedly useful one autumn day when Harry was walking home from school. Dudley and his gang had stayed late for detention, so Harry was enjoying the rare pleasure of a solitary walk. As he cut through the small wooded area that bordered the school grounds, he had the sudden, prickling sensation of being watched. Sathras? He called mentally. Are you there? Always, young speaker, came the immediate reply. What troubles you? I think someone's following me. There was a pause. Allow me to see through your eyes. Harry had practiced this skill with Sathras before, but usually in controlled situations. Now, he took a deep breath and opened the connection wider, letting the basilisk experience what he was experiencing. Continue walking, Sathras instructed. But take the path to your right, not your usual route. Harry obeyed, turning onto a narrower path that wound deeper into the trees. Now stop and pretend to tie your shoe, Sathras said. Look around casually as you do. Again, Harry followed the basilisk's instructions. As he knelt and fiddled with his shoelace, he glanced around, trying to appear natural. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Then, a movement caught his eye, a flash of dark fabric behind a tree about 20 yards back. There is someone there, Sathras confirmed. Not a child. Harry felt his heart rate increase. What should I do? Stand up slowly and continue walking, but increase your pace slightly. Turn left at the fork ahead, it leads to those houses we can see through the trees. Whoever follows you is less likely to act with potential witnesses nearby. Harry did as Sathras suggested, walking faster without running outright. He could hear soft footsteps behind him now, keeping pace. When he reached the fork in the path, he turned left, heading toward a row of houses visible through the thinning trees. The footsteps behind him quickened. They're coming closer, Harry reported, fighting the urge to run. Remain calm. When you reach the edge of the woods, you must run to the nearest house and knock on the door. Harry was almost to the tree line when a voice called out behind him. Mr. Potter. A moment, please. He froze. The voice was female, crisp and formal. Not what he'd expect from a kidnapper or mugger. Slowly, Harry turned around. A woman stood on the path about 10 feet away. She wore what Harry now recognized as wizarding robes, dark green and simply cut. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she regarded him through square spectacles with an expression of careful neutrality. Who are you? Harry asked, ready to run if she made any sudden moves. Be cautious, Sathras warned in his mind. But observe closely. This is a witch, not a common threat. My name is Minerva McGonagall, the woman said. I am a professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry blinked in surprise. Hogwarts? But I'm not 11 yet. I don't get my letter for almost 3 years. As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized his mistake. McGonagall's eyes widened slightly. You are aware of Hogwarts, then, she said, not quite a question. That is, unexpected. Harry shifted uncomfortably. My parents went there, he said, offering the simplest explanation. Indeed they did. I taught them both. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. You look very much like your father, though you have, my mother's eyes, Harry finished. I know. McGonagall's eyebrows rose even further. You know more than I anticipated, Mr. Potter. Which raises several questions, the first being, how? Careful, Sathras cautioned. This witch is connected to Dumbledore. Books, Harry said vaguely. And I've met people who knew them. Have you indeed? McGonagall's tone was skeptical. Mr. Potter, I am here because the Ministry detected an unusual pattern of magic in this area, controlled magic, not the accidental bursts common in children your age. Magic seemingly centered around you. Harry said nothing, mentally cursing himself for getting careless with his practice. I must ask you to be honest with me, McGonagall continued. Who has been teaching you magic before your time? Tell a version of the truth, Sathras advised. But not about me. No one's been teaching me, Harry said, which was technically true. Sathras had provided knowledge, but Harry had largely taught himself. I just figured some things out on my own. After strange things kept happening around me, I started trying to control it instead of just letting it happen. McGonagall studied him for a long moment. That would be most unusual. Extraordinary, in fact. Harry shrugged, trying to appear casual. I had a lot of motivation to figure it out. My relatives don't like magic much. Something flashed in McGonagall's eyes at that, anger, perhaps. But not directed at him. Be that as it may, Mr. Potter, underage wizards are not permitted to practice magic outside of school. The law makes exceptions for accidental magic, but what you have been doing appears deliberate. Am I in trouble? Harry asked, genuinely concerned now. McGonagall sighed. No. Not this time. Given your unique circumstances, and the fact that you have not yet been officially informed of the restrictions, this will be considered a warning only. Relief washed over Harry. However, McGonagall continued, I must insist that you refrain from further magical practice until you receive proper training at Hogwarts. Agree, Sathras advised. But we will simply need to be more careful. I understand, Harry said, trying to look appropriately chastened. McGonagall's expression remained stern, but there was something else there too, curiosity, perhaps, or concern. Mr. Potter, are you, well treated by your relatives? The question caught Harry off guard. They feed me and stuff, he said cautiously. McGonagall's lips thinned to a tight line. I see. And these people who knew your parents, who might they be? Harry scrambled for a plausible answer. Just someone I met who recognized me by my scar. They told me a few things. It was clear McGonagall didn't fully believe him, but she didn't press further. Very well. I shall be reporting this encounter to the headmaster. It may be that further checks on your situation will be necessary. With that rather cryptic statement, she straightened her robes. I trust you can find your way home from here. Harry nodded. Then good day, Mr. Potter. I expect we shall meet again when you receive your Hogwarts letter. She turned to go, then paused. Your parents were exceptional students and brave people. They would be proud of your magical aptitude, I think, though perhaps concerned by your premature experimentation. Before Harry could respond, McGonagall did something with what must have been her wand, a quick twist and tap, and vanished with a soft pop. That was apparition, Sathras informed him. Magical teleportation. Harry stood frozen for a moment, processing what had just happened. This changes matters, Sathras said gravely. If Dumbledore learns of your advanced knowledge and abilities, will he stop me from seeing you? Harry asked, suddenly fearful. He would certainly try, if he knew of my existence. For now, that remains our advantage, he does not know. But we must be more cautious than ever. Harry nodded, though Sathras couldn't see it. I'll be careful. I promise. He resumed his walk home, mind racing. McGonagall hadn't seemed like an enemy, more concerned than threatening. But her mention of Dumbledore and further checks was worrying. What will happen now? He asked Sathras. Difficult to predict. Dumbledore may increase surveillance on you, or he may simply file away this information until your official entry into the wizarding world. Should I stop visiting you at St. Bartholomew's? Perhaps temporarily, Sathras agreed reluctantly. But our mental connection remains secure. We can continue your education through dream visits while we assess the situation. That night, as Harry lay in his cupboard, he felt a strange mix of anxiety and excitement. He'd met an actual Hogwarts professor, someone who had known his parents. The wizarding world, which had existed for him only through Sathras's teachings and the books in Slytherin's library, had suddenly become more real. But with that reality came complications, rules, authorities, people who might try to control him or separate him from Sathras. We will adapt, Sathras assured him, sensing his troubled thoughts. You have learned much already, and your magic grows stronger each day. Whatever comes next, you will not face it unprepared or alone. Harry smiled in the darkness. No. Not alone. Never alone anymore. The further checks McGonagall had mentioned materialized a week later in the form of an unexpected visitor to Privet Drive. Harry was weeding the garden under Aunt Petunia's critical eye when an old man in what appeared to be a violently purple suit strolled up the driveway. Harry recognized him immediately from the descriptions in his books and Sathras's teachings. The long silver beard, the half-moon spectacles, the aura of power barely contained behind a grandfatherly demeanor, this could only be Albus Dumbledore. Sathras. Harry called mentally, panic rising. Dumbledore is here. Remain calm, Sathras replied instantly. Remember your occlumency exercises. Shield your thoughts of me behind mundane memories. Harry had been practicing the basics of occlumency, the magical art of protecting one's mind, for months, but he was far from mastering it. Still, he took a deep breath and focused on building his mental defenses as Sathras had taught him. Aunt Petunia had noticed their visitor and was staring with open horror at Dumbledore's eccentric appearance. "You," she hissed, glancing frantically at the neighboring houses to see if anyone was watching. "Good afternoon, Petunia," Dumbledore said pleasantly. "It has been some time since we last spoke. May I come in? There are matters we should discuss regarding young Harry." At the mention of Harry's name, Petunia's face pinched even tighter. "Vernon isn't home. I'm sure we can manage without him," Dumbledore replied, his tone light but somehow leaving no room for refusal. Petunia's lips thinned to a nearly invisible line, but she stepped back, allowing Dumbledore to enter. As he passed, the old wizard's eyes fell on Harry, still kneeling in the flower bed. "Hello, Harry," he said, his blue eyes twinkling behind his spectacles. "I'm Professor Dumbledore. I knew your parents quite well." "Hello, sir," Harry replied, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "Perhaps you'd like to join us inside? Our conversation concerns you, after all." Before Harry could respond, Petunia cut in sharply. "He has chores to finish." "The garden, I'm sure the garden can wait, Petunia," Dumbledore interrupted, his voice still pleasant but now with a definite edge. "Family matters take precedence, wouldn't you agree?" Without waiting for her answer, he turned and entered the house. Petunia shot Harry a venomous look before following. Harry stood, brushing soil from his knees. "What should I do?" he asked Sathras. "Join them. Listen more than you speak. Reveal as little as possible about your knowledge and abilities." Harry nodded slightly and headed inside, finding Dumbledore and Aunt Petunia in the living room. Dumbledore had settled himself comfortably in Uncle Vernon's armchair, while Petunia perched rigidly on the edge of the sofa. "Ah, Harry, do sit down," Dumbledore said, gesturing to the sofa. Harry sat as far from Petunia as possible, noting with some satisfaction how uncomfortable she looked having both him and Dumbledore in her pristine living room. "I'll come straight to the point," Dumbledore said. "It has come to my attention that Harry has been exhibiting signs of controlled magic, quite unusual for a child his age." Petunia made a strangled sound. "We've tried to stamp out that freakishness. Come now, Petunia," Dumbledore interrupted, his voice suddenly cold. "We both know that magic cannot be stamped out. It is an integral part of who Harry is." "We never wanted it in our home," she snapped. "We never wanted him." Harry had known this, of course, but hearing it stated so baldly still hurt. He kept his face impassive, however, as Sathras had taught him. Never show weakness to those who would exploit it. Dumbledore's expression darkened momentarily. "Regardless of your feelings, you accepted the responsibility of raising him when you took him in. A responsibility that extends to supporting all aspects of his development, including his magical heritage." Petunia said nothing, her lips pressed so tightly together they had disappeared entirely. Dumbledore turned to Harry, his expression softening. "Harry, Professor McGonagall mentioned that you've managed some control over your magic. That's quite remarkable for someone your age." Harry shrugged slightly. "I just got tired of strange things happening when I was upset. I figured if I concentrated, maybe I could stop it. And instead, you learned to direct it. Fascinating." Dumbledore leaned forward. "What sorts of magic have you managed, if you don't mind my asking?" "Careful," Sathras warned. "Small things," Harry said vaguely. Making light sometimes when my cupboard gets too dark. Warming myself up when I'm cold. Your cupboard? Dumbledore repeated, his eyes flicking to Petunia, who had gone very still. Harry realized his slip too late. I mean my room. He tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. Harry, Dumbledore said gently, where do you sleep in this house? Harry hesitated, then decided that hiding this particular truth served no purpose. In the cupboard under the stairs. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Dumbledore's eyes, which had been twinkling genially, now fixed on Petunia with icy intensity. I think, Harry, that I'd like to see this cupboard, he said quietly. Without waiting for Petunia's permission, Dumbledore stood and walked to the hallway. Harry followed, leaving Petunia frozen on the sofa. The cupboard door was closed but not locked. Dumbledore opened it, revealing the small space with its thin mattress, shabby blanket, and the few broken toys Harry had salvaged over the years. A crude drawing was taped to one wall, Harry's sketch of a large snake, which he'd done his best to hide whenever the Dursleys opened the cupboard. Dumbledore stood very still, looking at the cramped space. For a moment, the grandfatherly facade slipped, and Harry caught a glimpse of the powerful wizard beneath, anger barely contained, magic thrumming in the air around him. I see, Dumbledore said finally, his voice deceptively calm. He turned back to the living room, where Petunia remained seated, her face pale. This is unacceptable, Petunia. Completely unacceptable. We didn't have room, she began. You have 4 bedrooms in this house, Dumbledore cut her off. 1 for you and your husband, 1 for your son, 1 for guests, and 1 for your son's broken toys. Do not insult my intelligence by claiming you lack space. Petunia fell silent, a mix of fear and defiance on her face. Things will change, Dumbledore continued. Immediately. Harry will have a proper bedroom, I suggest the smallest one will suffice. He will receive adequate clothing, food, and care. He will not be treated as a servant. He will not be punished for his magic. And if we refuse? Petunia asked, finding her voice. You left him on our doorstep with no choice. We never agreed to raise one of your kind. You're quite right, Petunia. I did leave you without a choice, and perhaps that was my mistake. Dumbledore's voice was soft but carried a weight of power that made even Harry shiver. But make no mistake, you do not have a choice now, either. Harry will be treated properly, or there will be consequences. The threat hung in the air, unspecified but unmistakable. Vernon won't like this, Petunia said weakly. I'm sure you'll find a way to explain it to him, Dumbledore replied. Perhaps you might start by explaining why a representative of child services might take an interest in your household if conditions don't improve. Petunia paled further. If there was one thing the Dursleys feared more than magic, it was public scandal. Now, Dumbledore turned to Harry, his expression warming again. I believe you and I should have a private conversation. Is there somewhere we might speak undisturbed? The backyard? Harry suggested. Dudley won't be home from school for another hour. Excellent. They left Petunia in the living room and went out to the garden. Dumbledore cast a subtle spell with a wand he produced from his sleeve, creating what he called a privacy charm around them. So we may speak freely, he explained, settling onto the garden bench. No one will overhear us. Harry remained standing, unwilling to sit beside the wizard who had left him with the Dursleys for 7 years without checking on him. You're angry with me, Dumbledore observed. That's perfectly understandable. You knew they hated magic, Harry said, unable to keep the accusation from his voice. You knew they hated my parents. Why would you leave me here? Dumbledore sighed heavily. There were reasons, Harry, important ones. Your mother's sacrifice created a powerful protection that lives on in her blood, blood shared by her sister. While you can call this place home, that protection extends to you, keeping you safe from those who might wish you harm. Safe from Voldemort's followers, maybe, Harry said. But not safe from the Dursleys themselves. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose at Harry's casual use of Voldemort's name, but he nodded gravely. I believed they would treat you as their own. I was wrong, and for that, I am truly sorry. The apology was unexpected, and Harry wasn't sure how to respond. After a moment, he simply nodded. However, Dumbledore continued, I must ask how you've come to know about Voldemort, about magic, about Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall mentioned you seemed quite knowledgeable. Careful, Saphras warned again. After strange things kept happening around me, I started looking for answers, Harry said, sticking as close to the truth as he could. I found some books in the library about myths and legends. Some of it seemed to fit what I could do. Books in a Muggle library told you about Voldemort? Dumbledore asked skeptically. No, Harry admitted. That came later. I met someone who recognized my scar in London during a school trip. They told me a bit about what happened to my parents. I see. And this person's name was? They didn't say, Harry lied. Just that they were shocked to see Harry Potter in the middle of London. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, and Harry had the uncomfortable feeling the old wizard was trying to see into his mind. He reinforced his mental shields as best he could. Harry, Dumbledore said finally, I understand your desire for knowledge about your heritage. But seeking information from strangers could be dangerous. There are those in the wizarding world who wish you harm. Because of Voldemort, Harry said. Because I somehow defeated him as a baby. Yes. And while I intended to explain all of this when you were a bit older, when you received your Hogwarts letter, it seems you've discovered much on your own. Dumbledore paused. What else have you learned about the wizarding world? Harry chose his words carefully. That my parents didn't die in a car crash. That they were murdered trying to protect me. That I'm famous for something I don't even remember. All true, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though there is much more to the story, much more that you will learn in time. Like why Voldemort wanted to kill me specifically? Harry asked, watching Dumbledore's reaction closely. A flicker of surprise crossed the old wizard's face before he controlled it. You ask perceptive questions for one so young. I've had a lot of time to think, Harry said simply. Cupboards are boring. Dumbledore actually winced at that. Yes, well, as I said, things will change. The Dursleys will treat you better from now on, I'll make certain of it. Thank you, Harry said, and meant it, despite his mixed feelings about Dumbledore. As for your magic, Dumbledore continued, while your control is impressive, I must ask that you limit your practice until you begin formal training at Hogwarts. Untrained magic can be unpredictable and potentially dangerous. I understand, Harry said, once again having no intention of stopping his secret studies. Dumbledore smiled gently. I believe you do. You remind me very much of your mother, she too had an uncommon grasp of magic even before her formal education began. The comparison to his mother sent a warm feeling through Harry's chest. Now, Dumbledore said, rising from the bench, I think it's time I had another word with your aunt about your living arrangements. And perhaps I should stay for a chat with your uncle as well. He won't be happy, Harry warned. Few people are happy to see me these days, Dumbledore replied with a small smile. I've become quite accustomed to it. Before they returned inside, Dumbledore placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Harry, if at any point things become difficult here again, truly difficult, I want you to have a way to contact me. He produced a small silver object that looked like a cigarette lighter. This is a deluminator, he explained. Among its various functions, this particular one has been enchanted to alert me if you speak my name directly to it 3 times in succession. Use it only in genuine need, but know that it is available to you. Harry accepted the device, surprised by this gesture of trust. Thank you, sir. By the time Uncle Vernon returned from work, Harry's belongings had been moved to Dudley's second bedroom, and Dumbledore was waiting in the living room, ready to explain the new expectations for Harry's care. The shouting could be heard halfway down the street, but in the end, Vernon caved to Dumbledore's quiet authority and thinly veiled threats. That night, as Harry lay in a real bed for the first time he could remember, he reached out along his mental link to Sathras. "What do you think of Dumbledore now that you've seen him?" he asked. "Complex," Sathras replied thoughtfully. "Powerful, certainly. Manipulative, yes, but perhaps not entirely in the malicious way I had feared. He seems genuinely disturbed by your treatment here. He still left me with them for 7 years without checking. Indeed. A significant failing. Yet today he acted to correct that error, at least partially." Harry considered this. "He didn't try to take me away, though. The blood protection he mentioned is likely real," Sathras acknowledged. "And meaningful enough to make him accept an imperfect situation. But now that he has seen the true conditions, he has set boundaries. Do you think the Dursleys will actually follow them? For a time, certainly, they fear him. Whether that fear will override their nature in the long term remains to be seen." Harry turned onto his side, looking out the window at the stars visible through a gap in the curtains. "He suspects I know more than I'm saying. He tried to look into my mind, I felt it." "Your shield's held?" "I think so. He didn't react like he saw anything important." "Good. We must be even more cautious now. Dumbledore will be watching, directly or through others." Harry nodded in the darkness. "So what do we do?" "We adapt," Sathras replied. "We continue your education through our dream sessions. We minimize detectable magic use. And we wait for your official entry into the wizarding world, when you will have more freedom of movement." 3 more years until Hogwarts," Harry sighed. 3 years to prepare," Sathras corrected. "To learn, to grow stronger, to be ready for whatever awaits you there." Harry smiled, feeling the weight of the Deluminator in his hand. Yes, Dumbledore was watching now. But he didn't know about Sathras, about the chamber, about the true extent of Harry's knowledge and abilities. And Harry intended to keep it that way, at least until he understood the old wizard's true intentions. "Good night, Sathras," he thought, already drifting towards sleep. "Sleep well, young speaker. I will see you in the Chamber of Dreams." Chapter 2, Hidden in Plain Sight. Life at the Dursleys changed after Dumbledore's visit, not dramatically, but enough to make a difference. Harry now had Dudley's second bedroom, actual meals, though smaller portions than Dudley's mountain-sized servings, and fewer chores. Uncle Vernon mostly avoided him, apparently deciding that pretending Harry didn't exist was safer than actively tormenting him. Aunt Petunia still pressed her lips into that weird thin line whenever she looked at him, but she'd stopped hitting him with the frying pan when he burned the bacon. Progress, Harry supposed. Dudley, of course, had thrown an epic tantrum about losing his second bedroom. He'd screamed, thrown things, fake cried, and even held his breath until he turned purple. Uncle Vernon had taken him out for ice cream and bought him a new computer game to make up for the sacrifice, which was ridiculous since Dudley had only used the room to store broken toys. Harry didn't care. He had a real bed with a mattress that didn't sag in the middle. He had a desk. He had a window. It was practically a palace compared to the cupboard. Better yet, the Dursleys now left him alone most of the time, partly out of fear of Dumbledore, but also because ignoring him was easier than acknowledging the weird magical kid in their normal, proper household. "Boy! Come down for dinner." Aunt Petunia called up the stairs one evening, about a month after Dumbledore's visit. Harry looked up from the notebook where he'd been writing down everything he'd learned from Sathras during their most recent dream session. He quickly slid it under his mattress before heading downstairs. Dinner was roast chicken with potatoes, one of Harry's favorites, though he'd never admit that to the Dursleys. He sat quietly at his place, taking the portion Aunt Petunia served him without comment. It was smaller than Dudley's, of course, but actually enough to fill him up now. "My drill company got the Westingham contract," Uncle Vernon announced to the table, pointedly not looking at Harry. "Biggest order of the year." "That's wonderful, Vernon. Aunt Petunia gushed. I knew they'd choose Grunnings. Quality always wins out. Does this mean I can get a new computer? Dudley asked immediately, mouth full of chicken. The one I have is already 3 months old. Harry ate silently, letting their conversation wash over him. His mind was elsewhere, specifically, on the latest magical theory Sathras had been teaching him. Something about how emotion affected the power of spells, especially in young wizards without wands. Are you listening, Harry? Sathras's voice came suddenly in his mind, making him jump slightly. Fortunately, none of the Dursleys noticed. Yes, Harry replied mentally. Just at dinner. Can't talk much right now. Understandable. But I've discovered something important that cannot wait. The entrance beneath St. Bartholomew's, I believe it's safe to use again. Harry nearly dropped his fork. It had been over 6 months since he'd physically visited Sathras, relying instead on their dream connections. The idea of actually returning to the chamber sent excitement coursing through him. Are you sure? He asked. What about Dumbledore's watching? I've been monitoring the magical signatures in the area, Sathras explained. The surveillance he placed has grown routine. Predictable. There are gaps we can exploit. When? This Saturday. Your relatives often go shopping then, yes? Usually, yeah. They leave me with Mrs. Fig most of the time. Excellent. Create a reason to avoid that arrangement. I will provide details in tonight's dream session. The connection faded as Sathras withdrew, leaving Harry fighting to contain a smile. What are you grinning about, boy? Uncle Vernon suddenly demanded, apparently deciding to acknowledge Harry's existence for once. Nothing, Uncle Vernon, Harry replied quickly. Just, thinking about a book I'm reading. Vernon grunted and returned to his meal. Petunia, we need to go to that new shopping centre in London on Saturday. Dudley needs new uniforms for school. Harry could hardly believe his luck. What about him? Aunt Petunia asked, tilting her head slightly toward Harry without actually looking at him. Mrs. Fig can watch him as usual, Vernon said dismissively. Harry saw his opportunity. Mrs. Fig is visiting her sister this weekend, he said. I heard her telling Mrs. Jameson next door yesterday. This was a complete lie, but the Dursleys rarely bothered to verify anything Harry told them if it didn't seem immediately suspicious. Aunt Petunia frowned. I suppose he could come with us. No. Dudley shouted immediately. He'll ruin everything. He always does. He's old enough to stay here alone, Vernon decided after a moment's thought. 8 years old, aren't you, boy? Plenty old enough to look after yourself for a few hours without burning the house down. He fixed Harry with a stern look. You will not touch the television, the telephone, or any food except what your aunt leaves out for you. You will not invite anyone over. You will not leave the house. Understood? Yes, Uncle Vernon, Harry agreed, trying to look appropriately chastened while internally celebrating. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Harry spent the rest of the week enduring school, avoiding Dudley's gang, and planning with Sathras during their nightly dream sessions. Your surveillance has a pattern, Sathras explained as they sat together in their dream version of the chamber. Someone checks on your location approximately every 3 hours through magical means I cannot fully identify. But between those checks, there is a window of opportunity. How do you know all this? Harry asked, impressed. I have been expanding my territory, the Basilisk admitted. The pipes and tunnels beneath Surrey are old and connect in ways the builders never intended. I can sense magic from quite a distance now, especially magic directed at you. When Saturday finally arrived, Harry could barely contain his excitement. The Dursleys left around 10 in the morning, with the usual threats about what would happen if he misbehaved in their absence. The moment their car disappeared around the corner, Harry sprang into action. He pulled on his shoes, grabbed his notebook, and slipped the front door key into his pocket. Then he reached out mentally to Sathras. They're gone. I'm ready. Good. The next magical check just occurred. We have approximately 3 hours. Harry locked the house behind him and set off at a quick pace. Instead of heading toward the bus stop that would take him to St. Bartholomew's, he walked in the opposite direction, toward the small wooded area that bordered their neighborhood. Follow my directions exactly, Sathras instructed. We cannot risk being seen by anyone who might report back to your relatives or Dumbledore. Under Sathras's guidance, Harry wound his way through the trees until he came to a small, overgrown clearing. In the center was something that looked like an old well, half covered with vegetation. This is not on any Muggle maps, Sathras explained. It was part of an old manor house that stood here centuries ago. The Muggles forgot it, but the magical access point remains. Harry approached the well cautiously. What do I do? Remove the covering and look inside. You'll see a series of hand and footholds carved into the side. Climb down until you reach water, then speak, reveal, in Parseltongue. Harry pushed aside the wooden covering, releasing a musty smell of stagnant water and old stone. Peering down, he could just make out what looked like a ladder carved into the well's interior, disappearing into darkness. Taking a deep breath, Harry swung his legs over the edge and began to climb down. The stone was slippery with moss in places, but the handholds were deep and secure. He descended for what felt like several minutes until his foot finally touched water. Reveal, he hissed in Parseltongue. Immediately, the water began to drain away, revealing a narrow tunnel at the base of the well. Once the water had completely disappeared, Harry dropped down into the tunnel, which was just tall enough for him to stand upright. Proceed forward, Sathras directed. The tunnel slopes downward and will eventually connect to a larger passage. Harry walked for about 10 minutes through the dank tunnel before it opened into a much larger stone passage big enough for a grown man to walk comfortably, or a basilisk to slither through. And there, waiting in the shadows, was Sathras. You came! Harry exclaimed, rushing forward. I promised I would, the basilisk replied, its massive head lowering to Harry's level. It is good to see you in the flesh again, young speaker. Harry reached out and placed his hand on Sathras's scales, feeling the smooth, cool texture beneath his fingers. After months of dream conversations, the physical reality of the basilisk struck him anew, the sheer size and power of the creature who had become his closest friend and mentor. You've grown taller, Sathras observed. Not much, Harry said with a shrug. Dursleys still don't feed me as much as Dudley. Nevertheless, you are developing well. And your magical signature has strengthened considerably. I've been practicing like you showed me, Harry said proudly. I can turn lights on and off without touching the switch now, and last week I managed to heal a cut on my arm when Dudley pushed me into a rosebush. Excellent progress. But today, I have something new to show you. Sathras began moving down the tunnel. Follow me. They traveled through a network of passages that twisted and turned, gradually sloping deeper underground. Harry tried to memorize the route but soon gave up. Without Sathras's guidance, he would be hopelessly lost in this labyrinth. Where are we going? He asked after they'd been walking for nearly half an hour. To another part of Slytherin's network, one I believe you will find particularly interesting. Finally, they came to a circular stone door carved with serpents. This was different from the entrances Harry had seen before. The serpents were inlaid with what looked like emeralds, and strange symbols ran around the door's perimeter. What is this place? Harry asked, awed by the intricate craftsmanship. One of Salazar Slytherin's most closely guarded secrets, Sathras replied. His true study and library. The chamber beneath Hogwarts was created partly as a diversion, a grand, obvious hiding place to distract from the network of smaller, more functional spaces where he conducted his actual work. And you can open it? No. Only a speaker can command this door. Harry stepped forward, studying the serpents. What do I say? The simplest approach is usually best with Slytherin's works, Sathras advised. He appreciated elegance. Harry nodded and focused on the emerald-eyed serpents. "Open," he hissed in Parseltongue. Nothing happened. "Please open," he tried again. Still nothing. Harry frowned, thinking. "Saphras, you said Slytherin appreciated elegance. What if it's not about the command, but about who's giving it?" "An insightful observation," the Basilisk replied, sounding impressed. Harry straightened his shoulders and spoke again, this time with quiet authority. "I am Harry Potter, a speaker of the serpent tongue. I seek the knowledge of Salazar Slytherin." The emerald eyes of the serpents glowed, and the stone door slowly rotated, revealing a chamber beyond. "Well reasoned," Saphras said. Slytherin valued confidence and clear purpose in his students. The room they entered took Harry's breath away. Unlike the cavernous, somewhat grim Chamber of Secrets in London, this space was more like a comfortable study. Bookshelves lined the circular walls from floor to ceiling, interspersed with cabinets holding strange instruments and jars of mysterious substances. A massive desk of dark wood dominated the center of the room, its surface inlaid with silver runes. Comfortable-looking chairs with green upholstery were arranged around a fireplace that, impossibly, contained flames despite being underground and abandoned for centuries. "The fire is magical," Saphras explained, seeing Harry's confusion. "It requires no fuel and produces no smoke. Slytherin created it to provide light and warmth without consuming the oxygen in these sealed chambers." Harry approached the nearest bookshelf in awe. The volumes were bound in leather of various colors, their spines embossed with titles in languages Harry both recognized and didn't. "Can I touch them?" he asked hesitantly. "They are yours to explore," Saphras replied. "As a speaker, you have inherited the right to this knowledge." Harry carefully pulled a book from the shelf. Unlike the texts in the small library beneath St. Bartholomew's, this one didn't automatically translate itself. The title remained in what looked like Latin. "Many of these works require specific knowledge to access," Saphras explained. "Slytherin believed that understanding should be earned through study, not simply granted. So I need to learn Latin." "Eventually, yes. And several other languages as well. But there are volumes here suitable for your current level of knowledge." Saphras indicated a section of shelving with his tail. "These works are in Middle English, challenging for you, perhaps, but not impossible with practice." Harry replaced the Latin book and moved to the section Saphras had pointed out. He selected a volume bound in dark blue leather and opened it carefully. "A Young Wizard's Introduction to the Noble Arte of Potions," he read aloud, slowly deciphering the archaic spelling. "By Salazar Slytherin himself." Indeed. Slytherin was a master of potions, among his many talents. That particular volume was written for his youngest son when he first showed magical ability. Harry reverently placed the book on the desk to read later. "What else is here?" "Magical theory, history, arithmancy, runes, astronomy, herbology, all the disciplines taught at Hogwarts, and several that are not. There are also journals, correspondence, and personal notes that have never been seen outside Slytherin's family." Harry turned in a slow circle, taking in the vast collection of knowledge surrounding him. "This is incredible," he breathed. "There must be more books here than in my whole school library." "Slytherin was a scholar as well as a warrior," Saphras said. "History remembers his pride and ambition, but often forgets his dedication to learning." For the next hour, Harry explored the study, examining books and artifacts under Saphras's guidance. The Basilisk explained the significance of various items, a silver astrolabe that tracked not only stars but magical ley lines, a collection of crystalline vials containing what Saphras called memory essences, a small pensieve similar to the one Harry had seen in the chamber beneath St. Bartholomew's. "Can I use this?" Harry asked, pointing to the pensieve. "You may, though understanding what you see will require context. Memories without explanation can be misleading." "Do you have memories I could see?" Harry asked eagerly. Saphras made a sound that Harry had come to recognize as laughter. "I do, though extracting them would require magic beyond your current abilities. However, the basilisk paused thoughtfully. There may be another way. The connection between us is unusual, stronger than any I experienced with previous speakers. It might be possible for me to share memories directly through our mental link. Let's try it. Harry said excitedly. Very well. Sit comfortably and clear your mind, as you do for our dream sessions. Harry settled into one of the green armchairs, which was surprisingly comfortable despite its age. He closed his eyes and regulated his breathing as Sathras had taught him, emptying his mind of stray thoughts. I will share a memory of Salazar Slytherin himself, Sathras said, his voice sounding closer as the basilisk moved his head near Harry's. Open yourself to our connection, but do not fight what you see. Harry felt the familiar warm sensation of Sathras touching his mind, but instead of the usual gentle presence, there was a sudden rush of sensation, like being pulled into a whirlpool of sound and color. When his vision cleared, he was no longer in the study. He stood in what appeared to be a half-constructed stone hall of enormous proportions. Scaffolding lined the walls, and workers moved about with wands, directing blocks of stone through the air. 4 figures stood in the center of the hall, examining what looked like architectural plans hovering in the air before them. The great hall must be the heart of the school, a tall, regal-looking woman with dark hair was saying. A place where all houses come together as one Hogwarts. Agreed, Rowena, replied a powerfully built man with a lion emblem on his robes. Though I still think my tower design offers the best defensive position, we've discussed this, Godric, interrupted a stocky woman with a kind face but determined expression. The students' dormitories should reflect their house values. Your Gryffindors can have their Tower of Bravery, Rowena's Ravenclaws their Tower of Wisdom, and my Hufflepuffs our cozy quarters near the kitchens. And my Slytherins shall dwell beneath the lake, said the 4th figure, a tall, imposing man with sharp features and a neatly trimmed beard streaked with silver. Where cunning and ambition may flourish away from distractions. Harry realized with a jolt that he was looking at the 4 founders of Hogwarts, Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin himself. And he was seeing them through Sathras's eyes, from where the young basilisk watched from the shadows. Always separating yourself, Salazar, Gryffindor said with a frown. I worry about this tendency to isolate your students. My serpents thrive in their natural environment, just as your lions prefer high perches, Slytherin replied smoothly. We agreed to build a school that honors all magical approaches, did we not? Indeed we did, Hufflepuff interjected diplomatically. And the strength of Hogwarts will be in its diversity. The memory shifted, blurring and reforming. Now Harry/Sathras was in what appeared to be a private study, perhaps an early version of the very room where Harry's physical body still sat. Slytherin was older now, his beard fully silver, his face more lined. He sat at his desk, writing in a journal while occasionally glancing at a large egg resting in a cushioned box beside him. With a start, Harry realized he was seeing Sathras's egg. The others grow increasingly concerned about my methods, Slytherin was muttering to himself as he wrote. Godric especially. They cannot understand that not all magic is meant for public display and discussion. Some knowledge must be protected, preserved for those with the wisdom to use it properly. He looked directly at the egg, as if it could already hear him. You will be my greatest creation, my guardian. When you emerge, you will protect this chamber and the knowledge it contains until a worthy heir arrives to claim it. The memory dissolved, and Harry found himself back in the study, blinking in disorientation. That was amazing, he breathed. I saw the founders. And you, before you hatched. A glimpse only, Sathras said. I have many such memories, spanning centuries. In time, I will share more with you. Slytherin didn't seem like the villain the books make him out to be, Harry observed thoughtfully. History is written by the victorious, Sathras replied. After Slytherin left Hogwarts, his perspective was minimized in the official accounts. Why did he leave? Was it really just because he hated Muggleborns? Sathras coiled himself more comfortably on the stone floor. The truth is more complex. Slytherin did believe that magical education should be reserved for those born to magical families, but not merely out of prejudice as is commonly taught. In his time, witch hunts were a genuine threat. Muggle-born children sometimes inadvertently exposed the magical community, or even deliberately betrayed it when faced with the choice between loyalty to their magical peers or their Muggle families. So he was worried about security? Harry asked, trying to understand. Partly. He also believed that students raised in magical households entered Hogwarts better prepared and didn't require the same foundational education as those from Muggle backgrounds. He advocated for separate early education for Muggleborns before integrating them into Hogwarts proper. That, actually makes sense, Harry said slowly. It's not what I read in Hogwarts, a history. The simplified version of history serves certain narratives, Sathras said. I do not claim Slytherin was without flaw, he could be proud, stubborn, and sometimes harsh in his judgments. But he was not the one-dimensional villain portrayed in modern texts. Harry frowned, thinking about this new perspective. Is that why you showed me those memories? To give me a different view of Slytherin? Partly, Sathras acknowledged. But also to demonstrate that history is complex, and that you should question what you are told, even by those who present themselves as authorities. Including me. Harry looked up in surprise. You want me to question you too? A wise student examines all sources critically, Sathras replied. I have my own perspectives and biases, shaped by my experiences and the circumstances of my creation. As you grow in knowledge, you should develop your own understanding, not simply adopt mine. Harry felt a rush of affection for the Basilisk. What other teacher would encourage their student to question their teachings? Now, Sathras continued, we should use our remaining time wisely. There are several volumes I believe you should begin studying before your official entry into the wizarding world. Over the next hour, Sathras helped Harry select a small collection of books that would be particularly useful, a comprehensive magical theory text, a true history of the founding of Hogwarts, a beginner's guide to potions, and a fascinating volume on the political structure of wizarding Britain. I cannot allow you to remove these from the chamber, Sathras reminded him. But I have devised a solution. The Basilisk directed Harry to a cabinet containing blank journals similar to the one Harry had started at St. Bartholomew's. These are enchanted to connect with certain books in this library. Write the title of the work on the first page, and the contents will appear within the journal, accessible only to you. The knowledge will fade from the pages when others look upon them. Brilliant! Harry exclaimed, immediately selecting several of the special journals. We must begin returning soon, Sathras warned. Your 3-hour window is nearly expired. Harry nodded reluctantly and gathered the journals he'd selected. When can I come back? We must be cautious. I suggest no more than once a month for now. But our dream sessions can continue nightly, and with these journals, you will have access to much of the knowledge here. They made their way back through the tunnels, Harry clutching his precious new journals. At the well, Sathras gave him final instructions for his return journey. Remember, speak to no one of what you've learned today. Practice your occlumency each night to protect our secrets. I will, Harry promised. See you tonight in our dream session. Of course, young speaker. Now hurry, your relatives will return soon. Harry climbed the well shaft, emerged into the clearing, and quickly made his way home, arriving with barely 20 minutes to spare before the Dursleys returned. He hid his new journals beneath the loose floorboard he discovered under his bed, then settled himself in the living room with one of Dudley's discarded comics, looking for all the world like a boy who'd spent a boring day alone at home. When the Dursleys burst in, laden with shopping bags, they barely glanced at him. House still standing then? Uncle Vernon grunted. Yes, Uncle Vernon, Harry replied innocently. Good. Go help your aunt with dinner. As Harry followed Aunt Petunia to the kitchen, he felt a strange sense of power. Here he was, the same Harry Potter the Dursleys had always known, or so they thought. But in reality, he'd just returned from exploring Salazar Slytherin's secret study, had witnessed memories of the founding of Hogwarts, and carried magical journals filled with knowledge few wizards had ever accessed. He was hiding in plain sight, and the thought made him smile. The months that followed established a new pattern in Harry's life. On the surface, things remained relatively unchanged: school, limited interactions with the Dursleys, avoiding Dudley and his gang. But beneath this ordinary exterior, Harry's magical education accelerated dramatically. The journals from Slytherin's library proved invaluable. Each night, after the Dursleys went to bed, Harry would read by the light of a small magical glow he could now create and control with ease. The books covered everything from magical theory to wizarding history, potions ingredients to magical creatures. One text particularly fascinated him: The Noble Houses of Britain, a Political History. It detailed the complex web of relationships between the old wizarding families and how they influenced the Ministry of Magic. Harry was surprised to discover that his own family, the Potters, was considered one of the Sacred 28, the oldest and most influential wizarding bloodlines. "So I'm what they call a pure blood?" he asked Sathras during one of their dream sessions. "Not precisely," the Basilisk replied. "Your father was from a pure blood line, but your mother was Muggleborn. In the eyes of traditionalists, that makes you a half-blood." "Does it matter?" Harry asked, frowning. "To some, yes. Wizarding society has long-standing prejudices regarding blood status. But blood is merely one factor among many that shape a wizard's power and potential." Through his reading and Sathras's teachings, Harry developed a more nuanced understanding of the four Hogwarts houses than what was commonly portrayed. So Slytherins aren't all evil, Gryffindors aren't all heroes, Ravenclaws aren't all bookworms, and Hufflepuffs aren't all. What do they say about Hufflepuffs again? "That they are unexceptional students who fit nowhere else," Sathras replied with a hint of amusement. "A gross mischaracterization. Helga Hufflepuff valued hard work, loyalty, and inclusion, virtues that are often undervalued but essential to a functioning society." Harry nodded thoughtfully. "And my parents were both in Gryffindor, right?" "Yes. Though I suspect your mother might have done well in Ravenclaw, given her intellectual gifts. And your father had ambitions that would not have been out of place in Slytherin, despite his prejudice against the house." Once a month, when the Dursleys were reliably absent and Sathras confirmed the surveillance was at its weakest, Harry would make the journey to Slytherin's study. Each visit revealed new wonders, ancient artifacts, rare ingredients for potions, and once, a hidden room containing practice dummies for spellcasting. "Without a wand, your options are limited," Sathras acknowledged as Harry examined the dummies. "But the fundamentals of magical combat begin with positioning, timing, and strategy, all of which you can practice wandlessly." Harry's 9th birthday arrived with the usual Dursley indifference, but Sathras had prepared a special surprise. When Harry entered their dream chamber that night, he found it transformed into a replica of the Great Hall at Hogwarts, complete with floating candles and an enchanted ceiling showing a starry night sky. "This is what it will look like when you finally arrive," Sathras explained. "I constructed it from memories shared by previous speakers who attended Hogwarts." On a table lay a small cake with 9 candles and a gift wrapped in silver paper. "This is just a dream," Harry said, approaching the package cautiously. "I can't really open a present here, can I?" "Dreams have their own reality," Sathras replied cryptically. "Open it." Harry unwrapped the package to find what appeared to be a silver pendant in the shape of a coiled serpent, its eyes tiny emeralds. "It's beautiful," he said, lifting it by the chain. "But it's not real, right? It's just part of the dream. The physical version awaits you in our next meeting," Sathras said. "This is a protective amulet created by Slytherin himself. When worn, it shields the mind against casual intrusion and alerts the wearer to harmful potions or enchantments nearby." "Brilliant!" Harry exclaimed. "Thank you, Sathras. You approach an age where such protection may prove necessary," the Basilisk replied. "Especially as your entry into the wizarding world draws nearer." The pendant became a treasured possession after Harry retrieved the physical version during his next visit to the study. He kept it hidden beneath his clothes, its cool weight against his skin a constant reminder of his secret life and growing abilities. As Harry's understanding of magic deepened, so did his control over his own powers. By his 10th birthday, he could perform several wandless spells reliably, creating light, moving small objects, unlocking simple mechanisms, and even minor healing charms for cuts and bruises. "Your progress is remarkable," Saphras observed after Harry demonstrated his ability to change the color of a flower petal using only focused intent. "Many adult wizards struggle with wandless magic, yet you perform it with increasing ease. Is that because I started so young?" Harry asked. "Partly. Children's magic is more adaptable, less confined by preconceptions about what is possible or impossible. But I believe your particular gift also stems from your connection to me and the chamber. Parselmouths historically have demonstrated unusual magical affinities." Harry's growing powers occasionally manifested in ways he hadn't intended. When Dudley and his gang cornered him on the playground one afternoon, Harry felt his magic surge in response to his fear. Before he could control it, Dudley's shoelaces tied themselves together, sending his cousin crashing to the ground as he charged at Harry. The incident earned Harry a week of suspicious glares from Aunt Petunia, but no direct accusations. Since Dumbledore's visit, the Dursleys seemed reluctant to acknowledge anything magical about Harry, preferring to ignore strange occurrences rather than confront them. "You must be more careful," Saphras warned that night. "Such visible displays of magic could attract unwanted attention." "I know," Harry sighed. "It's just hard sometimes, when Dudley's being a prat. Consider it practice for Hogwarts, where you will need to appear appropriately novice despite your advanced knowledge." That was a sobering thought. Harry had been so focused on learning everything he could that he hadn't fully considered the implications of arriving at Hogwarts with abilities far beyond a typical first-year student. "Should I hide what I can do?" he asked. "Not hide entirely," Saphras advised after consideration. "But reveal your abilities gradually, strategically. Those who appear to master magic too quickly draw scrutiny. Those who seem talented but appropriately challenged are merely marked as promising students." As Harry approached his 11th birthday, their discussions increasingly focused on his imminent official entry into the wizarding world. "Your Hogwarts letter will arrive soon," Saphras said during one of their sessions in late July. "A representative of the school will likely escort you to purchase your supplies, given your Muggle upbringing." "But I'm not really Muggle-raised anymore, am I?" Harry pointed out. "Not in the ways that matter." "Indeed not. Yet you must appear to be exactly what they expect, Harry Potter, the boy who lived, raised in ignorance of his heritage and eager to learn about the magical world." "It feels dishonest," Harry admitted. "It is strategic," Saphras countered. "Until you understand the motivations of those who placed you with the Dursleys and kept you from your heritage, caution is warranted. Knowledge concealed is power preserved." Harry nodded reluctantly, seeing the wisdom in the Basilisk's advice. "So when my letter comes, I should act surprised?" "Excited? Naturally curious and eager, yes. But perhaps not entirely shocked. After all, strange things have happened around you your whole life. A certain degree of relief at finally having an explanation would seem appropriate." They spent several nights rehearsing different scenarios, how Harry should react to his first visit to Diagon Alley, what questions would seem natural for him to ask, what knowledge he should pretend not to have. "What about you?" Harry asked one night, the question that had been weighing on him. "How will we stay connected when I'm at Hogwarts?" "Our mental link will remain," Saphras assured him. "Distance may weaken it somewhat, but I believe we will still be able to communicate." "And?" The Basilisk paused, seeming almost hesitant. "There is another possibility I have been considering." "What is it?" "The Chamber of Secrets exists beneath Hogwarts itself. It is where I spent most of my long existence before you awakened me. I could return there, before your arrival at the school." Harry sat up straighter, excitement building. "You mean, you'd be there?" At Hogwarts with me? In a manner of speaking, yes. Hidden within the chamber, but accessible to you through the school's plumbing system, much as I access the areas near your home. That's brilliant! Harry exclaimed. We could still meet in person. It would involve risk, Sathras cautioned. The chamber's entrance is hidden within the school, but finding it without drawing attention will be challenging. And my movement through the pipes might be detected by the castle's ancient protective enchantments. But it's possible. Yes. I believe so. Harry grinned widely. Then we have to try. I can't imagine going to Hogwarts without you actually being there. Sathras made that strange hissing sound that Harry recognized as laughter. Your sentiment is appreciated, young speaker. We have been companions for nearly 6 years now, it would be difficult to be separated entirely. As July drew to a close, Harry grew increasingly anxious about the arrival of his Hogwarts letter. According to his books, the letters were typically delivered in the summer before a student's first year, with term beginning on September 1st. What if it doesn't come? He asked Sathras. What if they've forgotten about me? Impossible, the Basilisk assured him. Your name has been down for Hogwarts since birth. The magical quill that records potential students would not have overlooked you, especially given your lineage and power. Still, Harry found himself watching for the mail with growing impatience each morning. The Dursleys noticed his behavior but attributed it to typical childish summer restlessness. Then, 3 days before his 11th birthday, it happened. Harry was clearing the breakfast dishes when the mail slot clicked and the sound of letters hitting the doormat echoed through the hall. Get the mail, boy, Uncle Vernon said from behind his newspaper. Harry hurried to the door, heart pounding with anticipation. Among the usual bills and postcards lay a thick envelope made of yellowish parchment. The address was written in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. Harry stared at it for a long moment, even though he'd known exactly what to expect. This was it, his official invitation to the world he'd been secretly studying for years. With hands that trembled slightly, he picked up all the mail and returned to the kitchen. What's that you've got there, boy? Uncle Vernon asked, noticing Harry's fixation on the parchment envelope. It's a letter for me, Harry said, deliberately letting his voice sound surprised. Uncle Vernon snorted. Who'd be writing to you? Before Harry could answer, Dudley snatched the letter from his hands. Dad! Dad, Harry's got something. Give it back, it's mine. Harry protested, knowing he needed to play his part convincingly. Uncle Vernon chuckled as he took the letter from Dudley. Yours? Who would be? His words cut off abruptly as he saw the wax seal bearing the Hogwarts crest, a lion, eagle, badger, and snake surrounding a large letter H. His face went from red to green faster than a traffic light. P.P. Petunia, he gasped. Aunt Petunia came over to see what had caused such a reaction. When she saw the letter, her face paled and she clutched her throat as if choking. Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon! They stared at each other, seemingly forgetting that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley, not used to being ignored, rapped his father sharply on the head with his smelting stick. I want to read that letter, he said loudly. I want to read it, said Harry, maintaining the facade of the ignorant boy who didn't know what the letter contained. It's my letter. Out! Both of you, out, croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back into its envelope. Harry didn't move. I want my letter, he said firmly, deciding that a show of determination was appropriate for this situation. Let me see it, demanded Dudley. Out, roared Uncle Vernon, and he grabbed both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their necks and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Interesting reaction, Saphras's voice came in Harry's mind. More extreme than expected. They're terrified, Harry replied mentally as he listened at the keyhole while Dudley did the same at the crack between door and floor. Vernon, Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, look at the address, how could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house? Watching, spying, might be following us, muttered Uncle Vernon wildly. But what should we do, Vernon? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want. Harry could see Uncle Vernon's black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. No, he said finally. No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's best, we won't do anything. They're going to ignore it, Harry reported to Sathras. They think if they don't respond, it will just go away. Naive, Sathras replied with amusement. Hogwarts is not so easily dissuaded. If the first letter receives no response, more will follow. And eventually, a representative will come in person. Sure enough, over the next few days, letters began arriving in increasing numbers, 2 the next day, 3 the day after that, all addressed to Harry in the same emerald ink. Uncle Vernon stayed home from work to nail up the mail slot, but the letters came down the chimney, slipped under the door, and even appeared inside the 24 eggs delivered by the bewildered milkman. By Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon looked tired and ill as he sat at the breakfast table. No post on Sundays, he reminded everyone cheerfully, spreading marmalade on his newspapers. No damn letters today. As he spoke, something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney and caught him sharply on the back of the head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry deliberately jumped into the air trying to catch one. Out! Out! Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. When Aunt Petunia and Dudley had run out with their arms over their faces, Uncle Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and floor. That does it, said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly but pulling great tufts out of his mustache at the same time. I want you all back here in 5 minutes ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments. 10 minutes later, they had wrenched their way through the boarded-up doors and were in the car, speeding toward the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him round the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in his sports bag. This is getting ridiculous, Harry commented to Sathras as they drove. How far is Uncle Vernon going to take this? Further than reason would suggest, it seems, the Basilisk replied. But magical communications have ways of reaching their intended recipients, regardless of obstacles. Vernon drove them to a gloomy-looking hotel on the outskirts of a big city, but letters followed them there too, addressed to Mr. H. Potter, Room 17, Railview Hotel. The next day found them driving further into the countryside, through forests and across bridges, stopping occasionally for Vernon to get out and look around with a puzzled expression. Wouldn't it be better just to go home? Harry suggested, knowing the question would be ignored but feeling it was what the Harry they expected would ask. Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear him. By nightfall, a torrential rain had begun, and Vernon's increasingly erratic behavior led them to a tiny shack on a rock out at sea, accessible only by a small boat. As they huddled in the damp, cold shack, Harry on the softest bit of floor he could find, covered by the thinnest, most ragged blanket, he reached out to Sathras. This is insane, he commented. We're on a rock in the middle of the sea during a storm, all because Uncle Vernon doesn't want me to get a letter we both know I'm going to get eventually. Indeed, Sathras agreed. But tomorrow is your birthday. I suspect the school's patience with conventional methods may be exhausted by then. You think someone will come for me? I believe it likely. Dumbledore would not allow the boy who lived to miss his education because of recalcitrant muggles. Harry glanced at Dudley's watch in the dim moonlight filtering through the cracks in the walls. 5 minutes to midnight. Almost his birthday. I should probably pretend to be asleep when whoever it is arrives, he thought to Sathras. Less explaining to do about why I'm awake and waiting. A prudent approach, the Basilisk agreed. Harry laid back on his thin blanket, listening to the storm rage outside and Dudley's snores from the dilapidated sofa. 4 minutes to go. He wondered who Hogwarts would send. McGonagall again? Dumbledore himself? 3 minutes to go. Was that the sea, slapping hard on the rock like that? 2 minutes to go. What was that crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea? 1 minute to go and he'd be 11. 30 seconds, 20, 10, 9. Happy birthday, young speaker, Sathra said warmly. Thanks, Sathra, boom. The whole shack shivered. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. The thunderous knocking came again, shaking the entire shack. Dudley jerked awake, mumbling stupidly, "Where's the cannon?" There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room, holding a rifle. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." A pause, then, smash. The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and landed flat on the floor with a deafening crash. A giant of a man stood in the doorway, his face almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard. Despite knowing about the magical world, Harry couldn't help but stare in genuine shock. He'd expected someone from Hogwarts, but not this. The giant squeezed his way into the hut, stooping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup o' tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Budge up, yeah, great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "And here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle-black eyes were crinkled in a smile. "Last time I saw you, you was only a baby," said the giant. "Ya look a lot like your dad, but ye've got your mom's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." "Ah, shut up, Dursley, ye great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hands, bent it into a knot as easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into a corner of the room. "Anyway, Harry," said the giant, turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to ya. Got summat fair ya here, I might 'a sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right." From Something Went Wrong with this response, please try again. Ch to the end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.